This video is sponsored by Sketchfab. In this one I'll be modeling this character right here from a base mesh that we made in a previous video. Similar to the last video, this isn't one of my usual follow-along style tutorials, it's more about showing my process. There will be some time-lapse parts, but I'll still explain what I'm doing as I do it. Submissions for the character modeling challenge are now closed, and voting will be going on until May 7th, so if you'd like to vote for your favorite character, head over to my Discord server. Whoever gets the most votes will get a DECO L drawing tablet from XP Pen. We had a lot of submissions, and it was really nice to see some new people trying to improve their skills. I'll be doing more challenges in the future, so if you're interested in taking part, join us on Discord. Also, check out my Patreon for all the project files from my videos, coupon codes for free Gumroad products, and stuff I don't share anywhere else. I also donate a portion of the profits to environmental causes each month. Links for everything are in the description. Here's a summary of what I'll cover. I'll start by bringing in the base mesh from the other video, as well as a reference that I drew. I'll go through each part of the base mesh and alter stuff until the shapes match a little closer, and there's going to be a bunch of modeling from new objects, especially the head area. When I'm done with the modeling, I'll move on to materials and talk a little about how I got the Boba Tea to look this way. Alright, let's get started. So here we are in Blender. I'm using version 3.1 for this one. First, we just need to bring in that base model from the other video. So if you followed along, then you can append it. Just go to File, Append, and then find the file. I'm going to append the collection because I put each character in a collection, and I know it's the first character right here. And this is the same base mesh that we used for the last two characters also. So this is what we have right now. I'm just going to rename this collection. And I also want to bring in some references that I drew. So I have some really rough drawings right here. I'll just drag these in like that and then reposition them. Alt-G and Alt-R, rotate them 90 degrees. So I just made them close to the same size as our character right here, but they're set back a little further so, they don't get in the way when we look from the side. Now we can just run through and, reshape all of these body parts so that they match our reference a little better. I'll start with the legs, and for this I'm actually going to delete the legs, but I'll do that in edit mode so that we can keep all of the modifiers. I'm going to add in a plane, and I'm just going to hit M and merge at center so we have this single vert. I'll just extrude that upward. And yeah, these are just edges right now, but we're going to add a skin modifier, and that will give it some thickness. And I'll add another subdivision surface at the end. We'll go into edit mode and hit Control A. We'll just scale everything down. I want it to match the thickness of these, so it's a little thinner at the top, thicker at the bottom, very slightly, so we can just scale that accordingly. And I'll add a point in the middle and bend it out very slightly. And these are all of the modifiers that I'm using, so we'll reshape the body. So this is already pretty close, but I just want to make it a little flatter and a little, shorter on the Z-axis. And I'll also select the top and just extrude that upward so we have a little neck, basically. Bring the legs up a little more. Now we'll work on the arms, and for this, I'm just going to make them quite a bit skinnier. And these are using the skin modifier also, so Control A to scale. We're going to build on top of this a little later. We'll also scale the hands down. Now for the head, we are going to reuse this, and I'm just going to try to match this shape as best as I can. Now this isn't really straight on or, from the side. It's more of like a 3/4 view, so I'm going to have to be creative with this because I didn't make a very good reference. So I'll just try to match this as close as I can. So in edit mode, I'm just going to flatten some of these out, scaling them down to 0 on the Z-axis. So I'll dissolve some of these, so we just have the top and the bottom like that. You can dissolve with Control X. And I also want a loop along the edge right there. You can just select, each loop, the top and the bottom. And if you're using loop tools, which is just an add-on that you can turn on under preferences, you can right click, loop tools, and then circle, and that should round all of those out. In this part, I'm basically just moving things around, getting it close to what I think it should look like. Make sure you're always checking your reference and checking from all sides. So next we'll move on to the eyes, which are going to be pretty simple. We're just going to use UV spheres. Go into edit mode and rotate those 90 degrees, and then scale them down quite a bit. And I'm going to use snapping. I turn this to face snapping and set it to snap to the median, so it's paying attention to the origin point. So now when we're moving this around, we can just hold Control and it will snap like that. We want this to mirror, so add a mirror modifier and select the head. So I just want to get these the right size, similar to our reference. And when you have them where you want them, you can just Control A and apply the scale. Now the modeling for these is pretty minimal. I'm just going to go into edge select and dissolve this edge right here. And we'll move this part out a little, hit G twice to slide that loop. And we'll take this point and pull it in like that. And that's basically going to be our pupil. Now we'll duplicate this for the eyelid and rotate that 90 degrees on the X. Then we can go into edit mode and delete half of these faces like that. I'm just going to come in here and Alt E and extrude faces along normals like that. Get this as thick as you think it should be like that. We can always adjust this in here if we want. And for the eyelashes, we're just going to select this bottom loop, hit E to extrude, S to scale like that, but we don't want it to get thicker on the Z axis, so hit Shift Z and that should keep it flat. Now with this selected, I'm going to hit Shift H and that will hide everything else. And I'm going to turn on proportional editing. I'll set this to sharp. We can just select these and pull them out like that. Use your scroll wheel to change the area of influence. When you have it where you want it, all you have to do is hit Alt H and that will unhide everything else. Just make sure you turn off proportional editing when you're done with it. I didn't reset the rotation yet, so Control A and apply the rotation like that. We'll make the nose next, so I'll start with a plane and I'm going to add a mirror modifier, and then in edit mode we can pull it apart like that. If you want it to connect in the middle, you have to turn on clipping like that. Now I'll just scale this down quite a bit on the Y axis. I'm going to rotate everything on the X 90 degrees, bring this up in place roughly where I think the nose should be. So the nose is pretty geometric. It's kind of triangular. So I'll make the bottom a little wider like that and the top rather thin. And I want the top to be pointy, so I'm just gonna bring this down until it's kind of in line. Now I'll extrude this and just take this bottom point and pull it out like that. Select this now and just drag it into the face. For the mouth, we're also going to start with a plane. I'll rotate that 90 degrees also, scale it down. Okay, in object mode, I'll drag it up, and I still have face snapping on. I'm going to keep asymmetrical in the drawing. It's kind of off to the side a little, and I think that looks a little better. So I'll scale this down like that. And most of the modeling is just going to be with modifiers. So I'll add a solidify, and then I'll add a bevel and a subdivision surface like that. Change the bevel width to be quite a bit smaller, and that will make it sharper. And I'll just turn this up a little higher. And if you want the edges to be sharper, you can add a loop cut in here and, push them to the side or whatever. So now we'll just put it in place, rotate it a little. And that's the mouth, pretty simple. We're going to use the same setup for the eyebrows also, so I'll just duplicate that actually and reset the rotation. I will just add a mirror modifier. We can set this to the head. Now in edit mode, I'll just scale this around, make it a little bigger. Now for the hair, each character, I do the hair a little differently. I haven't found a workflow that just works for everything yet. This one, I'm going to duplicate the head, and we're going to apply the subdivision surface. I'll turn this down a little more, and then I'll apply that. And I'm going to delete half of these, and we'll add a mirror modifier in. Now in edit mode, I'm just going to delete all the faces where I don't want the hair to be. I think that's good. We can just delete those faces. And then I'll add a solidify, push the offset so it's actually sticking out. I'll add a subdivision surface. Now I want to be able to move this around while sticking to the head. So what I'll do is add a shrink wrap modifier, and eventually I will get rid of this, but this will help us out quite a bit for now. You just want to use the head as a target. Now when we go into edit mode and move these around, it will stick to the head like that. We can dissolve some of these loops if we have too many, so I'll dissolve that. I can dissolve some of these loops also, because I don't think we really need that many. I'm basically trying to keep this as low poly as I can. That way we don't have too many things to move, really. So I think that's pretty good to start with. When we have it the way we want, you can just start applying some of these modifiers from top to bottom. Apply the mirror, shrink wrap, and solidify. Go into edit mode, and we just have to delete half again so we can add a new mirror modifier. The thing is, if you leave the old mirror modifier and apply them out of order, it's not going to work correctly, so you have to do it this way. Okay, now we can, go through and start pushing these around. For proportional editing, make sure you have connected only turned on, and that will help it so it's not grabbing the inside as much, because now there are inside faces. So I'm going to add the long pieces of hair, the one going in front of the ear, and then the 3 in the front. So I'll do this one first. You can just grab that face and extrude it down. If you want it to be thinner, do that from the inside by grabbing this. Proportional editing is going to be really helpful for if you just want to change the overall shape. We can make the back look like the hair is a little longer by taking some of these points and pulling them outward. And for the bangs, we're going to do a similar thing for right here. Bring these up a little and make them like a little thinner. So make sure you have clipping turned on for this. And you can just extrude that out. I'll do the same thing for these two, like that. And then, you know, just push and pull, resize them. These, instead of sticking down, I want them to stick out a little more. Grab some of these loops, pull them up, try to get them a little smoother. This is when staying low poly is going to help you, because the more points you have, the harder it's going to be to keep it smooth. I think that's looking pretty good. And if you have any parts that are clipping through like that, you can just pull them out slightly. I'm also going to add a few loops right here just to add a little resolution. So for the bun, we're going to keep that as a separate object, and we're just going to start with a cube, and I'll scale that down quite a bit, put that in position. And actually, before I position it, I'm going to add a subdivision surface like that, and come in here, and I want to subdivide this. And to keep it from getting blocky like that, hit F3 and search for to sphere like that, and pull it, and it will, you know, become more spherical. So now we have more faces to work with, and I'm just going to select the bottom few faces like this, and I'll inset that. Extrude that down just a little bit. I want these to be more circular, so I'll select the bottom edges right here and these ones right there, and use loop tools again to change that into a circle. Select all these faces and Alt-E, extrude individual faces like that. Now this is going to kind of create some hair sticking out from the bottom. I'm just going to drag this up so that the origin point is towards the bottom, and now we should position it like that, and that's the bun. That's how it looks. Shade that smooth. Now let's make the ear and the earring. I'll just reuse the eyebrow right here, so duplicate that, and I'm gonna get rid of this bevel, and I'm just gonna reshape this a little. Okay, and I think this should be maybe a little thicker. Before I place it, I'm gonna model the earring on here too. Again, I'll just duplicate this and work from that. Delete these vertices like that, and we're just starting with a square basically. Scale the top in and the bottom out like that. And you can select this face and inset it, and then I'll delete that face. So now it's actually a ring. We can just change the solidify, and I want the corners to be a little sharper, so I'll just select the edges right here and bevel them with Control B. I might just make the bottom look a little thicker. Move this in edit mode so that the origin point is in a good spot. I'll put it like right about there. And now this will be a little easier to move around. Rotate it 90 degrees, parent this to the ear with Control P, put the ear in place, rotate that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Make sure you're naming everything. Next we'll make the glasses. For that I'll start out with a plane right here. I'll use a mirror modifier, and in edit mode we can just pull it apart and scale it down quite a bit. Bring this up, scale these down and put them over the eyes. We can add a subdivision surface, like Control 2. Now I'll duplicate this and reuse it for a few other parts. So I'm gonna turn clipping on for this and push it a little closer. This is gonna be like the nose part. I will push it back a little so it's not, you know, on the same level. So I'll turn clipping off and I'll just bring it out like that. And we'll use this for the ears. Rotate this 90 degrees. And we'll look from the side. I think the ears should be a little lower. I'm pretty much just gonna drag it over like that and just start extruding like that. Can move some of these to try to keep the thickness a little more regular. And I'll add a loop cut over here to make it a little tighter right there. And I'll select this and make sure that it's actually pretty close to the ear. And I'll select these right here and extrude that on the x-axis until it's looking like it's connecting basically. And extrude that. And I also want to grab both of these faces and inset them so it's a little sharper on the edges. Now I'll just select this and hit H to hide it for now. I'll extrude this a little also. Actually, since this has some bends, I'll extrude that along normals. Now I want this to be a little sharper on the edges, so select some of these edges right here, hit N and go to item and turn the mean crease up. And for this one in the center, I'm just gonna select everything and turn that up so it's sharp. Just wanna hit Alt H to bring that back and make sure that it's actually in line and in place with the other pieces. So I want to shade this smooth and also turn on auto smooth under, the normals right here. So in edit mode, I'll select everything. And once again, I'm just doing this to position the origin point where I want. So move everything, origin points right here. Then back in object mode, I can make this so it's actually pivoting like around the ear like that. And we can move some of these back if we want it to sit a little closer to the head. Just select all of these points. And I'm gonna hit G and then Y twice, like that. Now let's work on this sweatshirt right here. We'll see if we can work with this being low poly. I think we should be able to. We're looking for a shape like this, like kind of a bell shape, and then the elastic at the bottom is going to create this kind of seam right there. So we can take this and scale that inward quite a bit, and then scale this out. We'll just select this right here and turn the mean crease up like that. And on the bottom, I also want to inset that, and we can extrude that upward if we want. I think adding another loop in the middle to make it kind of roundness right there might help. I think we have to move the legs a little so that they're not, breaking through. And I want to add kind of like an elastic near the neck also. So I'll drag that down a little, scale it in. Now I'll just select this whole edge right here and Alt E, extrude faces along normals like that. Just gonna drag that down so it's going straight out. Now I want these to be pretty sharp edges, so select that loop and also this loop. And I'm just gonna turn the mean crease up. Let's add a loop cut right here, and then we can drag this in like that. And from a distance it seems a little small, so we can just make it a little thicker. Now we should work on the sleeve, so we'll apply the skin modifier. We're doing a similar thing where it gets kind of round and then it gets tight right here where the elastic is. So I'll make a loop cut right here and I'll scale that out just a little bit, and we'll drag this one inside like that. And with this selected, we can turn the mean crease up to tighten it quite a bit. We can drag this forward as far as we want. Now this is going to be a lot easier with fewer loops, so I'll just select all of these right here and Control X to dissolve that, and then we'll just add the loops that we need to make that shape. We also need one towards the middle, but I do want to make sure that there's enough geometry in the middle for when I add a rig in here. Let's take a little break to talk about the sponsor, Sketchfab. Sketchfab is an online marketplace where you can buy and sell 3D models. They have more than 3 million models to check out over there, and if you use their importer add-on, you can get models into your scene super quickly. Looking at their models is really enjoyable because you can inspect them in the browser to see them from any angle. This way you know exactly what you're getting. Click the link in the description to check out Sketchfab. Next we'll work on the shoes, and for the shoes I actually found some references on Pinterest. So I was using these for the profile reference, so I'll be looking back and forth, at this when I model. So we'll start out with a cube, and I want to add a mirror modifier, and I'll set this to the head for now. Scale it down quite a bit, and I'll just apply the scale. We can turn back on incremental snapping and use absolute grid, and I'll just take this and snap it to that 0 mark right there. Now I'm going to box model and just try to get this profile pretty close while keeping it low poly. I also want the bottom to be pretty thick. So I'll just put a loop cut here, scale that down to 0 on the Z-axis, and drag this part up. So I'll add another loop in here, and maybe scale that in a little on the Z-axis. We can also do the same thing for the front of the toe. It gets a little more narrow right there. I'll scale some of these in on the top. Before I go too far, I'm going to add a subdivision surface. And temporarily, I'll just mark the bottom as being completely sharp. And we'll tidy this up a little later. But I think this just helps me get the, the initial modeling done. So this is getting pretty close. I know that the top is going to be open though, so I'm actually just going to delete these faces. I'm actually going to put another loop right here, and we can use this to kind of dial in the thickness a little. Now that we have that looking okay, I'm going to turn the sharpness down for everything with the mean crease, and we're going to start adding some loop cuts. So I'll add a loop cut right here, and this one I'm actually going to scale down on the X a little and on the Y to create like a slight pinch, and we'll also add one towards the bottom. This might actually look a little better if we add a loop, all the way around, and I can pull the front out to make it a little more round. One thing is that I want to separate the tongue. So what I'll do is just select some of these faces right here where I want it to be separated from, and when you have this selected, right click, edge split, and now it should be a separate piece. You can just select these faces and move them wherever you want. I'll add a solidify. I just want to put that before the subdivision. I'll just move this up a little, and we can work to try to get this a little rounder. So it shouldn't be too hard. We can just pull some of these in. Now I'll select this tongue, and we'll just place it back down inside here. And I just want it to be kind of underneath. And I'm going to add one more loop at the top, so that it can make the top curl up just a little bit, like that. So for the laces, I'm going to do something a little cheap in here. I'm just going to select the tongue and duplicate it and hit P and separate by selection. So now this should be a different object. We can just rename these, make this a little more simple. I'll get rid of that edge, flip the offset to go the opposite way. This will just help me see a little better. And I'm going to line this up using face snapping right here. So I'll just line this up. Now we're just going to add a bunch of loop cuts, but make sure you're in edge select mode for this. And these are going to be all of our laces. We're going to split these edges, so make these as thick as you want your laces to be. Now with these still selected, you can right click and edge split. Now when we turn the subdivision surface back on, we'll have all of these laces basically. Now this is going to look a little better if we use the bevel modifier before the subdivision and after the solidify, and now we can control like how sharp we want these to be. So, and the offset right there, and we can, sync these in. It might make sense to add some roundness in here. So I'll just go back into edit mode, and just to make this a little quicker, I'm just gonna merge by distance like that. We'll add a loop in here, and we can just pull that up, and then we'll mess with the offset, get this looking a little better. So nothing should be really like clipping through too much. Now we can just split these edges again, and there we have it. Now next we're going to make the boba tea, and this I also used some references. Basically what I did is I just searched boba tea on Pinterest, and I'm just looking around at all of these. I'm not copying one exactly. I'm just kind of looking at common cup shapes, things like that. So this is an easy one. I'll just add in a cube, add a subdivision surface. Now in edit mode, just scale this down quite a bit. And we still have incremental snapping on, so I'll snap these to the 0 line right there. So for the top and the bottom, I'm just gonna mark these sharp with a mean crease like that. I'll just try to get the shape that I want. Just scaling these down, it's not bad. Now I'll turn the mean crease down for both of these, and we'll work on getting the rest of the shape. So I'll just inset the bottom a little. I'll inset again and extrude that up slightly so we get that little ring at the bottom. Now for the top, I'm actually gonna extrude this a little. I'm gonna extrude this along normals. I just wanna mark this bottom one, this bottom ring sharp right there. Now I'll inset the top and extrude that down a little. We're just going to create like a few rings basically. Inset this one. This is going to be for the hole, and I'll just push that forward. Inset a little again, and I'll just delete that face, and now we have a hole. I do want to give this some slight thickness with a solidify right here. So for the straw, what I can do is just duplicate one of these inner edges right there. So select that and duplicate it, and I'll separate that by selection. And you should be able to select this ring right here. We can just extrude this upward like that, and I'll flip the solidify offset so it's going in, figure out how long I want this to be. And I don't want it to be super snug, so I'll select everything, scale it with Shift Z so it's not scaling on the Z axis, and just make it a little smaller so there's some space around it. A thing that we could do is set it so that the origin point is right at the lid, and that will make it easier to rotate. So I'll just come in here, select this ring, and Shift S, cursor to selected. Then we can right click this, set origin to 3D cursor. And then I'll put the cursor back at the world origin, and we should be able to just rotate this on the X like that. Now for the liquid, what we're gonna do is duplicate the cup, just rename this T, and I want to apply the subdivision surface and the solidify. Basically, I'm looking at the unselected faces and picturing that as like the level of the T inside. I'll just delete that. And I also want to delete all of the outside edges, so we should be able to do that with L, because now the inside and outside are not connected. We can just delete that. And you can select that ring and Control F. I'll just do grid fill right here. Now I want to make sure this isn't flipped inside out, so a way we can check for that is under here, face orientation. I'll just move this, and it looks like it is inside out, so F3 and then flip normals like that. If it's inside out, you might get errors when you're messing with the shading. I just want to parent the T and the straw to the cup right here with Control P. So now let's work on the materials, and the material that we'll start with is the T, the Boba Tea, because I think this one is pretty interesting. So we'll go up to the shading workspace up here, and I'm gonna do everything in cycles for this, because when we're working with transparency, cycles just works a little better. So go up to render, cycles, and I'm gonna set my device to GPU. This just goes a little faster on my computer. Now for the cup, I'll delete that and add a glass shader like that. Change the roughness up to like 0.2 and maybe turn the index of refraction down a little to like 1.1. Actually, for the roughness, I'm just gonna keep that all the way down for now. Now for the straw, can just make this like an orange color. Now we might get some shading errors where you can see like through the liquid, and there is actually a reason for that. These planes are like touching too closely, so usually what I'll do is I'll just select everything and just scale it up just like a tiny little bit, and that should fix that. So now it looks a little better. So let's select the tea now, and I'll just name this Boba Tea. And I'll actually do this in Eevee. So mostly what the tapioca pearls are is just a Voronoi texture. So we'll bring in a Voronoi, make sure this is using the object coordinates, and we'll take a look at that. And you can see we're getting all these kind of like circular shapes. If we use a map range, we can change some of these. So I'll just turn the from max down quite a bit, and I'll turn the from min up a little, and you can see we're getting these kind of circles. You can set this to smooth right here. I just don't want it up all the way. I'll turn it down pretty low, but this just helps smooth when they interact. And if circles are close to each other, they'll also look kind of blobby like that. Now I want it to look like they're settling at the bottom, so the way I did that actually is just by using the generated texture coordinates right here. We can extract just one of the axes, and I want the Z axis, so I'll bring in a separate XYZ, and if we set it to Z, that's basically just looking at the top and the bottom and making like a smooth gradient like that. We can use that to control this map range right here. Instead of using a map range, I'm going to use this other node that I made called a compressor. You can download this for free from my, my free node groups. It's basically just a map range, but I have it set up so it's kind of focusing on a center value like that. So if we use the Z right here, we should be able to plug it into the center value. And you can see now it's kind of settling at the opposite end. We can bring in a map range, use this to control it. So I want to flip this around. So I'll set the to min to 1 and the 2 max to 0 like that. Now it's settling at the bottom. We can also change these values to change how far these are spreading. So if we turn the 2 min down a little bit, this is kind of what's happening like that. Once again, I find it a little easier to use a compressor, so I'll just duplicate this, bring that over. So the center value is going to change the level like that. So I'll set that on the low end right there, and we'll turn the randomness up a little more. I think that looks pretty good. Now we can just use this like a mask. So I'll bring in a mix RGB. We'll just plug this into the factor. Now we can use these 2 colors to control, you know, the color of everything. And we'll bring everything back, and this is how it looks in the cup right there. For the textures for the rest of the character, I used a combination of using a palette that I showed in quite a few of my other videos. If you're interested in how that works, you can check out my my character playlist right here. I talk about it in most of those videos. And then I just, you know, do some basic things for like the skin, where I'm just using like a principled shader and applying that to all the areas where I think the skin should be. For the earrings, I just made like a metallic, very shiny orange. The glasses, I made those slightly metallic because I thought it was a cool look, even though it's not really physically accurate. This character isn't very physically accurate, so I feel like it fits with the stylized thing. The sweater, once again, is just using like a Voronoi texture. That's creating these like polka dots. And for the fabric, that's actually just a magic texture. A lot of people don't use the magic texture, but I find that it's pretty good for making really quick fabric. If you look really closely, it is not very realistic, but from a distance, it looks pretty good actually. And for rigging, I did the same thing that I did in the last video, where I brought in a rig that I made before. It's actually the same one that you can download for free on Gumroad. I just brought that in, kind of moved the bones around, and, you know, parented it all up. And I was basically just rigging this so I could pose it. I didn't end up animating this character. But if you're interested in learning more about rigging, I also have a rigging playlist that you can check out. So the videos over there will be far more in-depth than this time lapse right here. All right, that's it for this one. I'm planning on having the next few videos be about getting started with geometry nodes, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Use the link below to check out Sketchfab, and if you want the file that I made in this video, you can find that on Patreon. I'd like to thank my patrons for their support, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a good one.